What happens when a casual morning talk show conversation spirals into one of the most uncomfortable moments in daytime television history? Kelly Clarkson, known for her warmth and authenticity, found herself in a situation that would test every ounce of her professionalism. The cameras were rolling, the audience was watching, and what started as light banter quickly transformed into something nobody saw coming. Before we dive into exactly what was said that made Kelly stand up and walk off that set, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us what you think really happened here. The morning started like any other taping of today with Jenna and Friends. The studio buzzed with its usual energy, crew members adjusting lights and checking sound levels while the audience settled into their seats. Kelly Clarkson arrived right on schedule, flashing that signature smile that had won over America since her American Idol days. She wore a burgundy blazer over a cream-colored blouse, her hair styled in loose waves, looking every bit the confident superstar who had conquered music, television, and just about everything else she touched. Jenna Hager greeted her warmly as Kelly made her way to the couch, exchanging pleasantries with the other hosts who were joining them for this particular episode. The segment was supposed to be fun and breezy, a chance for Kelly to promote her latest projects while engaging in the kind of light-hearted conversation that morning television thrives on. Jenna started off with safe territory, asking Kelly about her recent tours and how she managed to balance her talk show with her music career. Kelly answered with her typical blend of humor and honesty, talking about the chaos of juggling multiple projects and how her kids kept her grounded through it all. The audience laughed in all the right places, and everything seemed to be going exactly as planned. But then, one of the guest hosts, who had been brought on specifically for this episode, decided to steer the conversation in a different direction. She leaned forward with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes and said, "You know, Kelly, I have to ask, there has been so much talk about your divorce and how public everything became. How do you feel about people saying you overshared during that time? Do you ever regret being so open about your personal struggles?" The energy in the room shifted immediately. Kelly's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second before she recovered, her media training kicking in. She took a breath and replied, "Well, I think being authentic is important. I have always been someone who shares my truth, and I know that resonates with people going through similar things. I do not regret being honest about what I was experiencing." The guest host was not satisfied with that answer. She pressed on, her tone taking on an edge that made several people in the audience exchange uncomfortable glances. "But don't you think there is a line," she asked, "between being authentic and using your personal pain for publicity? I mean, you talked about it on your show, in interviews, even worked it into your music. Some people might say that is calculated, not authentic." Jenna tried to interject, sensing the conversation was heading somewhere dangerous, but Kelly held up a hand. Her expression had changed now, the warmth draining from her eyes and being replaced by something harder, more guarded. She sat up straighter and said, "I am sorry. Are you suggesting that I exploited my own divorce? That I used one of the most painful experiences of my life as a marketing strategy?" The guest host shrugged, maintaining that same artificial smile. "I am just saying what a lot of people are thinking. You have built your brand on being relatable and vulnerable, and conveniently, your divorce happened right when your talk show was finding its footing. The timing worked out pretty well for you, didn't it?" The studio had gone completely silent. Even the crew members had stopped what they were doing, frozen in disbelief at what they were witnessing. This was not the playful ribbing that sometimes happened on talk shows. This was something else entirely, something that felt personal and pointed. Kelly's jaw tightened. She looked at Jenna, then back at the guest host, clearly trying to decide how to respond. When she finally spoke, her voice was measured, but you could hear the anger simmering beneath the surface. "You know what?" she said. "I came here today as a favor because Jenna asked me to. I cleared my schedule. I showed up ready to have a good time and connect with the audience. But I am not going to sit here and be accused of fabricating pain for ratings. My divorce was real. The heartbreak was real. The struggle to protect my kids while going through that publicly was real. And if you cannot understand the difference between being genuine and being calculating, then I really do not know what to tell you." The guest host leaned back, seemingly pleased with herself for getting such a strong reaction. She exchanged a glance with one of the other people on the couch, a look that suggested this confrontation had been at least partially planned. "Oh, come on, Kelly," she said with a laugh that sounded forced. "I am just asking the tough questions. Is not that what journalism is about? You cannot expect everyone to just lob softballs at you all the time. Kelly's hands gripped the armrest of the couch. That is not journalism, she said, her voice rising slightly. That is you making assumptions about my life, my pain, and my intentions without knowing anything about what I actually went through. There is a difference between asking a challenging question and making accusations disguised as questions. What you just did was the latter. Jenna finally managed to jump in, her face flushed with obvious discomfort. Okay, let's maybe take a step back here, she said, trying to inject some lightness into her voice. Kelly, we absolutely did not mean to make you uncomfortable, and I think maybe we can move on to talking about your new album. But the guest host was not done. Before Kelly could respond to Jenna, she jumped back in with another pointed comment. I just find it interesting, she said, that you are so defensive about this. If you truly believe you did nothing wrong, why does it bother you so much when someone questions it? Maybe there is a part of you that knows you crossed a line with how much you shared. Maybe that is why you are reacting this way. Kelly stared at her for a long moment, and you could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. She was weighing her options, deciding whether to continue engaging or to remove herself from the situation entirely. The audience sat in stunned silence, watching this train wreck unfold in real time. Some of them had their phones out, undoubtedly recording every second of what was happening. I am reacting this way, Kelly said slowly, deliberately, because you are sitting here psychoanalyzing me on national television based on absolutely nothing. You do not know me. You do not know what I went through. You do not know the nights I cried myself to sleep, or the mornings. I had to put on a brave face for my kids, even though I felt like I was falling apart. You do not get to sit there and reduce my experience to some calculated business move. The guest host opened her mouth to respond, but Kelly was not finished. She stood up from the couch, and that movement alone sent a ripple of shock through the studio. This was not how these things were supposed to go. Guests did not just stand up in the middle of segments. They smiled through discomfort. They deflected with humor. They played the game. But Kelly was clearly done playing. You know what? She said, looking directly at the camera before turning to Jenna. I have spent years being told I am too honest, too open, too much. And I have also been told I am not honest enough, not vulnerable enough to guard it. There is literally no way to win when people are determined to find fault with everything you do. I came here today in good faith, and I am not going to stand here. Sorry, sit here and be attacked for being human. Jenna stood up as well, reaching out toward Kelly with genuine concern on her face. Kelly, please, I am so sorry. This is not, we didn't mean for. She stumbled over her words, clearly mortified by how the situation had devolved. The guest host remained seated, her expression unreadable now. Though there was a flicker of something, maybe satisfaction, maybe regret, it was hard to tell. Kelly took a step back from the couch, creating physical distance between herself and the panel. She looked at Jenna, and her voice softened slightly. I know you didn't, Jenna, she said, and I appreciate you trying to make this work, but I cannot do this. I will not do this. I have worked too hard on my mental health and my boundaries to sit here and let someone tear me down for sport. The guest host finally stood up as well, and instead of backing down, she doubled down on her position. Kelly, I think you are overreacting, she said, her voice taking on a condescending tone that made several audience members audibly gasp. This is what happens in interviews. People ask questions. If you cannot handle that, maybe you shouldn't be doing press tours. Maybe you should stick to your own show where you control the narrative completely. That last comment landed like a bomb. Kelly's eyes widened, and for a moment, she looked genuinely shocked that someone would say something so deliberately provocative on live television. The other hosts on the couch looked equally stunned, their heads swiveling between Kelly and the guest host, like they were watching a tennis match from hell. One of them, an entertainment reporter who had been mostly quiet until now, cleared his throat nervously and said, Okay, I think we all need to just take a breath here. But Kelly was beyond taking breaths. She laughed, but it was not a happy sound. It was the kind of laugh that comes out when you are so far past angry that you have circled back around to a strange kind of clarity. You think I cannot handle questions? She said, her voice steady now, almost eerily calm. I have been answering questions for over 2 decades. I have sat through interviews where people asked me about my weight, my appearance, my parenting, my relationships. Every single aspect of my life has been dissected and discussed. I can handle questions. What I cannot handle, and what I will not handle, is someone disguising their judgment as journalism. The guest host crossed her arms defensively. I am just doing my job, she insisted. My job is to ask the questions that audiences want answered. And trust me, people have questions about how you have handled your very public personal life. That is not me being mean. That is me being honest. Kelly shook her head, a bitter smile playing at her lips. No, she said. Honest would be saying, Hey, Kelly, some people have criticized how open you have been about your divorce. How do you respond to that? That is honest. What you did was make a statement disguised as a question. You said my divorce was convenient for my career. You implied I used my children's pain for publicity. Those are not questions, those are accusations, and I am not going to stand here and legitimize them with a response. Jenna was practically begging now, her hands clasped together as she tried desperately to salvage the situation. Kelly, please, maybe we can take a quick break and regroup. We can start fresh, talk about your music, your upcoming projects, anything you want to talk about. Please. Kelly turned to look at Jenna, and her expression softened with genuine affection and sympathy. She clearly did not want to make this harder for Jenna than it already was. Jenna, you are one of the kindest people I know, she said gently. And I know you would never intentionally put me in this position, but I cannot stay here and pretend this is okay. I cannot sit back down on that couch and laugh and smile like the last 10 minutes didn't happen. That is not who I am, and honestly, that is not who I want to be. The guest host let out an exasperated sigh. So you are just going to walk off set, she said, like a child throwing a tantrum. That is really the message you want to send. That when things get a little uncomfortable, you just leave. Kelly whipped around to face her again, and the fire was back in her eyes. A tantrum, she repeated incredulously. You think standing up for myself and setting a boundary is a tantrum? This right here, this is exactly the problem. Women are expected to sit there and take it, to smile through discomfort, to never push back when someone crosses a line. And when we do push back, when we say, no, this is not okay, we are told we are being dramatic or emotional or throwing tantrums. I am done with that narrative. The audience was completely captivated now. Some people nodding in agreement with Kelly, while others looked on in shock. This was not the polished, carefully managed content they were used to seeing on morning television. This was raw and real and deeply uncomfortable, and nobody could look away. The entertainment reporter tried again to mediate. Ladies, he said, his voice placating. I think we can all agree that emotions are running high right now. Kelly, no one here wants you to feel attacked. And I am sure our colleague here did not mean for her questions to come across as harshly as they did. Maybe we can all just acknowledge that this got out of hand and move forward. Kelly appreciated his attempt at peacekeeping, but she was not interested in false reconciliation. I appreciate what you are trying to do, she told him, but this did not just get out of hand. This was a deliberate choice. Those questions were not asked in good faith. They were asked to provoke a reaction. And congratulations, she said. Looking back at the guest host, you got one. I hope whatever point you were trying to make was worth it. The guest host's facade finally cracked a little. Her face flushed, and she snapped back. My point is that celebrities cannot have it both ways. You cannot share every detail of your personal life when it benefits you, and then cry foul when people have opinions about what you shared. You put it out there, Kelly. You made it public. You do not get to be surprised when the public responds. Kelly took a step closer, closing the distance she had created moments before. I put my truth out there, she said, her voice low and intense, because I thought it might help other people going through the same thing. I shared my pain because I wanted people to know they were not alone. I talked about my struggle because I hoped it would destigmatize divorce and mental health challenges and all the messy, complicated parts of being human. I did not do it for ratings. I did not do it for publicity. I did it because I genuinely believed it was the right thing to do. And you know what? Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I should have kept it all private. Maybe I should have hidden behind publicist statements and vague Instagram posts. But I didn't, because I thought honesty mattered. Clearly, I was mistaken. Jenna had tears in her eyes now, visibly distressed by the whole situation. Kelly, your honesty does matter, she said earnestly. It matters to so many people. Please do not let this make you regret being open. That is not what this is about. But Kelly was shaking her head. Is not it, though? She asked. Because it feels like that is exactly what this is about. It feels like I am being punished for being vulnerable. And if that is the case, if this is what happens when you are real with people, then what is the point? Why should anyone be honest about what they are going through if they are just going to be picked apart for it later? The guest host rolled her eyes, which was possibly the worst thing she could have done in that moment. "Oh, please," she muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You are not being punished. You are being held accountable. There is a difference." Kelly stared at her for a long, tense moment. "Accountable for what?" she asked quietly. "For being human. For going through a divorce. For talking about it, instead of suffering in silence. What exactly am I being held accountable for here?" The guest host opened her mouth, but seemed to realize she had painted herself into a corner. She stammered for a second before saying, "For using your platform in a way that some people find exploitative." "Some people," Kelly repeated. "You mean you? You find it exploitative." So instead of just saying that directly, instead of owning your opinion, you are hiding behind some imaginary group of critics and pretending you are just asking questions on their behalf. That is not journalism. That is cowardice. The word hung in the air like a slap. The guest host's face went bright red, and she took a step forward. "How dare you?" she started to say, but Kelly cut her off. "No," Kelly said firmly. "How dare you? How dare you sit there and question my integrity, my motherhood, my choices, my pain, all under the guise of doing your job? How dare you act like you have any right to judge me for how I handled one of the worst periods of my life? You do not know me. You have never walked a day in my shoes, and you certainly have not earned the right to tell me how I should have handled my own trauma." Jenna stepped between them physically now, her hands up in a stopping gesture. "Okay," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "We need to stop this right now. This has gone way too far. Kelly, I am so incredibly sorry that this happened. This is not what we wanted. This is not what anyone wanted." And she turned to the guest host. "We need to apologize right now. This is not acceptable." The guest host looked mutinous, but Jenna's expression left no room for argument. After a long pause, she said stiffly, "I apologize if I upset you, Kelly. That was not my intention." Kelly let out a short, humorless laugh. "If you upset me," she repeated, "that is not an apology. That is a deflection. You are not sorry for what you said. You are sorry that I reacted. Those are two very different things." The tension was suffocating now. Production staff were hovering at the edges of the set, clearly unsure whether to cut to commercial or let this play out. The audience sat frozen, witnessing something that would undoubtedly become a viral moment within hours. This was the kind of television that people would talk about for years, the kind of unscripted drama that no amount of planning could manufacture. Kelly turned away from the guest host and addressed Jenna directly, her voice weary now, the adrenaline starting to fade and leaving exhaustion in its wake. "Jenna, I love you," she said, "and I am so sorry that I am putting you in this position. But I have to go. I have to leave because if I stay here, if I keep engaging with this, I am going to say something I actually regret. And I have worked too hard on myself to let someone else drag me down to a place I do not want to be." Jenna grabbed Kelly's hand, squeezing it tightly. "I understand," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I completely understand. And I am the one who is sorry. This should never have happened. You deserved so much better than this." The guest host made a sound of frustration. "This is ridiculous," she said to no one in particular. "We are all adults here. We should be able to have difficult conversations without someone storming off. This is exactly what I am talking about, Kelly. You want to be seen as strong and independent, but the moment someone challenges you, you run away." Kelly froze. She had been starting to gather her things, mentally preparing to leave the studio with whatever dignity she had left, but that comment stopped her cold. She turned back slowly, and when she spoke, her voice was different. It was not angry anymore. It was something deeper, something that came from a place of hard-won wisdom and painful experience. "You think leaving is running away?" she said quietly. "You think setting a boundary is weakness. That tells me everything I need to know about you. Because the truth is, it takes a hell of a lot more strength to walk away from a toxic situation than it does to stay and fight. I spent years of my life in situations where I should have left, but didn't. Where I should have spoken up, but stayed silent. Where I should have protected myself, but instead tried to keep the peace. And you know what that got me? It got me anxiety and sleepless nights and a version of myself that I did not even recognize anymore. So no, I am not running away. I am making a choice. I am choosing myself. And if you see that as weakness, then that is your problem, not mine. The entertainment reporter who had tried to mediate earlier spoke up again, his voice gentle. Kelly, I think what you are saying is really powerful. And I think a lot of people watching this are going to understand exactly where you are coming from. You have every right to protect your peace. Kelly nodded at him gratefully. Thank you, she said. I appreciate that. And look, I know how this is going to look. I know people are going to have opinions about me walking off. Some people will say I was too sensitive, that I couldn't handle the heat. Other people will say I was right to stand up for myself. And honestly, I have learned that I cannot control what people think about me. All I can control is how I respond to situations and how I choose to treat myself. The guest host was not ready to let it go. She crossed her arms again and said, You talk a lot about boundaries and protecting yourself, but what about accountability? What about being willing to hear criticism and grow from it? Is not that part of being a public figure? Kelly exhaled slowly, clearly trying to maintain her composure. Of course it is, she said. I am absolutely open to criticism. I have been criticized my entire career, sometimes fairly and sometimes not. But there is a massive difference between constructive criticism and what you did here today. Constructive criticism comes from a place of wanting to help someone improve or see things differently. What you did came from a place of wanting to tear me down, and I am not interested in participating in that. Jenna finally found her voice again, and when she spoke, there was steel in it that surprised everyone. She looked directly at the guest host and said, I think we need to be really clear about something here. This show is supposed to be a place where people feel comfortable and respected. It is supposed to be fun and uplifting. What happened today was neither of those things, and I take full responsibility for not shutting this down sooner. Kelly, you have been nothing but gracious and professional, and I am ashamed that we put you in this position. The guest host's mouth dropped open. Jenna, you cannot be serious right now, she said. I was doing my job. I was asking the questions that needed to be asked. Are we just supposed to let celebrities come on here and control the entire conversation? Jenna shook her head firmly. There is a difference between asking tough questions and attacking someone, and what you did crossed that line. Kelly is a guest on this show, and more than that, she is a friend. And we do not treat our friends this way. We do not treat anyone this way. Kelly looked at Jenna with genuine warmth and gratitude. Thank you, she said softly. That means more than you know. The guest host threw up her hands. Fine, she said. If everyone wants to act like I am the villain here, that is fine. But I stand by what I said. Someone needed to ask those questions, and I am not going to apologize for doing it. Kelly studied her for a moment, and then something shifted in her expression. It softened, not with forgiveness exactly, but with understanding. You know what, she said? I actually feel sorry for you. I do. Because you are so convinced that tearing other people down is strength, that being harsh is the same as being honest. And that is a really sad way to live. I hope someday you figure out that you can be direct and truthful without being cruel. I hope you learn that building people up is so much more powerful than breaking them down. But that is your journey to take. And I am not going to waste any more of my energy trying to teach you something you are not ready to learn. The guest host's face flushed again, but this time she did not have a comeback. She stood there, silent, as Kelly turned back to Jenna one last time. I am going to go now, Kelly said. I am going to walk out of here with my head held high, because I know that I showed up today with good intentions, and I handled this situation with as much grace as I could manage. I am not going to feel bad about protecting myself, and I am not going to apologize for having boundaries. Jenna hugged her tightly. You are incredible, she whispered. And I am so sorry. Kelly hugged her back just as fiercely. I know you are, she said. And this is not on you. You tried to stop it. You tried to make it right. That is all anyone can do. As Kelly pulled away from the hug, she took one last look at the audience. Some of them were crying, some were applauding quietly, and all of them were watching her with a mixture of sympathy and admiration. She gave them a small smile, a real one this time, and said, Thank you all for being here today. I am sorry you had to witness this, but I hope maybe something good comes from it. I hope it reminds people that it is okay to stand up for yourself. It is okay to say no. It is okay to leave situations that do not serve you. You do not owe anyone your presence, especially when they are not respecting you." Then she turned and walked toward the exit. The cameras followed her every step, capturing the moment that would be replayed and analyzed countless times in the hours and days to come. Her heels clicked against the studio floor, steady and sure, each step taking her further away from the chaos and closer to her own peace. Behind her, the set had erupted into hushed conversations. The guest host stood alone, looking suddenly uncertain as the reality of what had just happened seemed to sink in. Jenna was talking urgently to one of the producers, gesturing animatedly. The entertainment reporter was on his phone, probably already seeing the social media reaction starting to build. The audience was buzzing with energy, everyone talking over each other, sharing their shock and opinions about what they had just witnessed. But Kelly did not look back. She pushed through the studio doors and into the hallway beyond, where her team was waiting with concerned expressions. They immediately surrounded her, offering support and asking if she was okay. She nodded, taking a deep breath that seemed to release some of the tension she had been holding in her body. "I am okay," she told them. "I am actually more than okay. I am proud of myself." And she was. Despite the mess, despite the headlines that would inevitably follow, despite the think pieces and hot takes and endless social media debates, Kelly felt a sense of clarity that she had not felt in a long time. She had drawn a line in the sand. She had stood up for herself without losing her composure or compromising her values. She had shown that you can be strong without being aggressive, that you can have boundaries without being difficult, that you can protect yourself without tearing others down. Back in the studio, they had cut to commercial, the producers scrambling to figure out how to proceed with the rest of the show. Jenna was visibly shaken, her carefully maintained professional demeanor cracking under the weight of what had just occurred. The guest host had been ushered off set, her future appearances suddenly very much in question. The entertainment reporter was already drafting a statement in his head, trying to find the words to address what had happened without making things worse. So what do you think about how Kelly handled this situation? Do you think she was right to walk off, or should she have stayed and continued the conversation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure you hit that subscribe button for more stories like this one.